Good morning, everybody. My name is Arnav Bose. I'm a program manager in the Office client side of the house, and I work on a team that we internally call Document Storage and Synchronization Services. And we focus on a lot of the features that actually enable things like multi-user editing of documents, offline synchronization of documents, and end-to-end functionality that uses the MS FSS HTTP protocol that some folks may have heard about, as well as some of the SharePoint list sync protocols that Hector was talking about just before this presentation. We lost a bunch of time, unfortunately, with some setup problems here, but we're good to go now. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to focus most of my presentation on new features and new functionality that we've delivered in Office 2013 as part of the new Office 2013 wave of clients and SharePoint servers. I'll try to connect those features up with some of the protocols that you may have heard of over this last week, including the stuff that Hector was mentioning. And my team member, Simon Clark, is up next. He's a developer on our team, and he's going to be the one focusing a little bit more deeply on the specifics of the FSS HTTP protocol. So I'll give you a bit of an insight into the user scenarios and features, and Simon's going to talk a little bit more about how the protocol actually works. Alrighty. My mouse. Next. Let's see if the next slide actually happens. Okay, there we go. So the agenda is I'll give you an overview. I'll talk a little bit about a new feature we delivered in Office 2013, which we are calling our SkyDrive and SkyDrive Pro sync integration, which gives us offline access to files. And then I'll talk a little bit about an enterprise-focused feature that we built that was all about ensuring that branch office scenarios have low latency availability to documents that are actually stored on SharePoint servers that are far away. And that's our Office 2013 and branch cache integration features. So what does our team deliver? We work on delivering co-authoring across all our platforms. Our platforms are SharePoint and Office 365 for enterprises, skydrive.com for consumers, and on the client side, we've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint for Windows, Word, Excel, PowerPoint for Mac, as well as the Word, Excel, and PowerPoint web applications. We focus a lot also on ensuring that changes to documents are uploaded and downloaded as efficiently as possible over the wire. A lot of those features are delivered, actually all of those features are delivered by the FSS HTTP protocol itself. We focus on the ability to allow users to open documents offline and synchronize document libraries down to a folder on the user's hard drive so that they're available for easy access. We want to make sure that opening and saving Office documents that are stored on SharePoint, Office 365, and skydrive.com servers are as fast as local files from an end-user scenario perspective. And we also want to make sure that these scenarios are reliable. So this is a super high-level kind of view of the stack from our point of view. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about the places where we focus on and where I can sort of answer questions and provide insight. The Office applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Visio are built directly on top of a component we deliver called the Office Document Cache. If you've been using Office 2010 or Office 2013, you would have noticed a little orange icon in your system tray called the Office Upload Center. That's kind of the user visible aspect of that cache. It allows us to go ahead and deliver scenarios like offline access and caching. We also own the FSS HTTP protocol. I know Hector talked a little bit about that. I don't know if there were other talks earlier on this week about it. There's going to be a more detailed conversation about that protocol that Simon gives. And then this protocol goes over the wire and contacts some server-side APIs that we use to end up ultimately storing the file data, whether it's in Office 365, SharePoint, or skydrive.com. And these actually exist on the individual services themselves. There are a few other ways that Office apps go ahead and open and save files. I think there was a question about FPSE in the previous presentation. So it is correct that Office 2013 apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Visio, and OneNote no longer really use FPSE for file uploads and downloads, but we do still have some apps like Publisher that we haven't updated as yet that still continue to use that protocol. So I think SharePoint still supports it. From a client perspective, we still have a couple of applications that we haven't updated as yet. And we also have a couple of applications that are still using DAV. Again, these are not commonly used protocols for the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Visio apps. Is there a question?
When you say that it's been updated so that it doesn't use FPSC, are you saying we're Office 2013?
Office 2010, Word, Excel, PowerPoint no longer uses FPSC for uploads and downloads. Office 2013 Visio no longer uses FPSC for uploads and downloads. Publisher 2010 and 2013 continues to use FPSC. I think InfoPath continues to use FPSC. It's DAV, yeah, it's DAV. So just so that it's on video and recorded, Simon's comment was 2010 and 2013, those apps I called out, they actually use the DAV protocol, and in very rare cases, they fall back to FPSC. So realistically, you should expect that FPSC usage is being actively de-emphasized across our suite.
I think the main scenario where FPRPC comes in is on I think an XP install with an old version of Office. So you're not going to see it in modern deployments.
That's exactly right. Yep. So since we spent a bunch of time getting this set up, I want to kind of get straight to actual end user scenarios that we are enabling. We've enabled SkyDrive and SkyDrive Pro integration. I'll sort of walk you guys through what that looks like, what it means, how it actually interoperates with our protocols, Office protocols. The goals for, so waiting for this next slide transition to happen. There you go. Oh, we went one too far. The goals for this investment are as follows. We want users to be able to store documents by default to SkyDrive or SkyDrive Pro. When they do that, we also want to ensure that they continue to have the same reliability of the experience that they expect off of their local My Documents folder. There's a certain sort of things that people expect out of their local documents, such as access when they're offline, ability to search for them using standard Mac or Windows desktop search functionality, being able to create documents when offline, being able to rename files reliably. But there's also a bunch of new, interesting, cool things we can deliver by having these files be stored on SkyDrive Pro or SkyDrive, such as co-authoring, sharing, access across multiple devices, keeping things up to date as you go from your desktop computer to your laptop and back and forth. So that's kind of the motivation for this. In order to get all this stuff right, especially for things like co-authoring, sharing, and efficient synchronization, all these three things rely on the FSS HTTP protocol. So that's how we go ahead and make sure that as the user is making changes to a bunch of Office documents and we're replicating those between the clients, the servers, and all the other different machines that the user has, we are not having to re-upload and re-download the whole file over and over again. We are not taking exclusive locks and preventing sharing and co-authoring. That functionality is delivered by FSS HTTP. This slide is about like some of the user-facing things that people may encounter with the document cache. It has really nothing to do with the actual protocol itself. But I just want to call it out as in, if you've been playing with Office 2013, you may see some of these things. We have kind of multiple caches, one for files you've opened from just random servers that you access documents from. There are separate caches for things like SkyDrive and SkyDrive Pro, for which you may have set up an explicit sync relationship. There's a location for the cache, which is under the user's local app data folder on a Windows device. And if you go ahead and actually poke around over there, you'll see many things like actual local files get created and stuff like that. It's basically at a super high level a database that keeps track of the documents you have access to offline, and it's used as a local store. It is by definition a cache. So that's the way it works. If you poke around in the Office 15, Office 2013 install, you'll see some stuff like this. It doesn't have any direct dependency on the way that the actual protocol is implemented. It's just the way that we have implemented it and the way we cache content. Yep. The size of the cache is dependent on the number of files you have synced offline. And I believe we have some caps, like there are, the cache is designed not to ever exceed 10% of your free hard drive space for files you've just been opening and accessing from random SharePoint or SkyDrive servers. For locations you're explicitly synchronizing, like if you say you go to your O365 team set and say, I want to take that whole team set offline, it'll basically be the size of that team set, and that's the level to which it'll grow. It may be a bit larger than the file sizes of the documents added up, and that's mostly because we keep a few copies of the documents around from a logical perspective so we can do things like merging for co-authoring scenarios. So the size is proportional to the number of documents you've taken offline, but is not guaranteed to be the same. It's probably going to be a bit larger. That's a good question. Sorry. Question is, what is the relationship between the cache of the files that are in SkyDrive Pro and the file system? There's a one-to-one relationship. The cache is essentially a database that tracks the URLs that we have taken offline. It tracks a few of the base copies, as we call them, so that we have a sense of the state from which the user is diverging as they're making new edits to the local file system copy. So in case there's a conflict when you upload to the server, we can figure out if it's a real conflict or not and things like that. So it's mostly for management purposes and management of synchronization. And there's a one-to-one mapping of entries in the cache to things that you've gone ahead and actually synced offline. Cool. So I'll just get directly into the demo so that we can actually see it in action. So this particular file that I've got is actually living on my SkyDrive Pro. So it's on my SkyDrive at Microsoft. One of the things I want to show you guys is, again, I think Hector talked a little bit about the versions SOAP web service endpoint that's exposed on the server side. So I've actually got historical versioning enabled on my SkyDrive Pro. And what the client application here is doing is it's actually using that version's SOAP web service to query the server and figure out that there is a historical version created at this point in time by me yesterday. And if I click on that, it'll actually download that particular older copy of the document and show it to me in a read-only copy. So again, the presentation I'm actually showing you right now, it's on my SkyDrive Pro. What I just did was I used some of the versions, but not me, the application used some of the versions web services to go ahead and download a previous copy of the document. This is an implementation that we've done on the client side. So I'm going to close that guy. The one other thing I'll show you guys is the check-in, check-out web service that's also exposed as a feature in the web UI. The web service actually gets used, and the over-the-wire protocol gets used in the client apps. So from that manage versions UI entry point, you can go ahead and try and check out the file. What I was doing is, I'll just go ahead and do that. Okay, so what I did was I went ahead and opened the same file from the PowerPoint web application. So I want to give you guys a quick demo of co-authoring. I'll co-author with myself on the same machine. One client being the PowerPoint web application, and the second client being the PowerPoint rich client, the 2013. Now that I have the file open in the PowerPoint web app, what should happen is when I go to the checkout option here and try to check out the file, it's going to tell me that I can't check it out because there's somebody else editing the document. It's me in this case, but the way it's designed is the checkout feature is focused on ensuring that you can take essentially an exclusive lock on the file and prevent other co-authors from joining it. However, if another co-author is already in the document, then that'll fail. But again, like this particular dialog is being shown based off of a response we got back from the server using that check-in, check-out over-the-wire protocol. So again, an example of how we're using those web services exposed by SharePoint. Okay, cool. So now that I opened the file in the web application, it's showing me that Arnab is editing this document. Now I'm going to show up twice. And this functionality is actually being exposed through the FSS HTTP protocol. FSS HTTP has the capability to go ahead and synchronize a list of editors who are currently active in your document. So the application is able to go ahead and query for this data. It's taken a shared lock on this file. And the shared lock essentially ensures that only client applications or web applications that satisfy the FSS HTTP contract are capable of entering and joining this co-authoring session. Alrighty. So we were in the SkyDrive demo slide. So I'm going to say is going great. And I'll hit save over here. And that's going to upload my changes back up to the server. And if I now navigate to PowerPoint, the web app, the couple of things I want to show you. One is the web app also has the same user experience where it shows you the list of editors. The second thing is the changes are already there. So I made some changes in the client application. This is now the website, and the PowerPoint web app is also reflecting the edits I made to the document in that particular slide. The other thing you should be seeing, which I don't see here, yes, that thing, is there should be a little bit of a pawn over here that shows that I was in that document, but maybe it's not showing that because I no longer have PowerPoint, the rich client in focus. The meta point I want to make over here is a few things happened. One is the PowerPoint client application was able to send an incremental change over the wire that was corresponding to the edit I made to this particular slide. And the way it was able to do that was via the FSS HTTP protocol. We committed this change on the server side, and the PowerPoint web application, which also understands this protocol, was able to query for that update, bring down the change to that slide, and instantiate it in its UI. So this is an example of how we have enabled multi-user authoring using the FSS HTTP protocol. Awesome. So this is the rich client again. Ooh. Leave this. I don't know if it's actually going great or not because I haven't finished it as yet, so we'll hold our horses a little bit. Question? So the question is the poll time 60 seconds? The protocol actually doesn't define what the poll time is. In our applications, the poll time is dependent on what we call server health, and there's a way for us to dynamically go ahead and increase or decrease that based on how heavily the server is being used. So that decision is actually up to the implementer. The implementer can decide whether to make it dynamic, whether there should be a minimum bar based off of an end user experience you want to provide, or whether there's a hard-coded value you want to just use because you have confidence in the scalability of your service. So that's not something that we require to be a specific value. So the question is, do I have an example of a more dynamic workflow where more than one person can work on the document simultaneously, or if it has to be linear? The answer is the workflow that we've delivered through these web as well as rich client Word and PowerPoint applications is dynamic. It's just because I'm one demoer and a single human who's editing in two different places, I can't do it simultaneously. But the way the protocol works and the way our implementation works is you could be simultaneously editing slide number 8 and making changes to it, and I could be making simultaneous changes to slide number 9, and that will work just fine. That it's by design. So that's a good question. Again, the question is, if you ended up making changes in the same slide or the same paragraph, would we show both changes simultaneously, or would it be locked down? That is actually a decision that is up to the implementer and the client application. It is not something that is specified in the protocol. The decision about at what granularity you lock the end user out is an end user experience decision. So for example, for us, the PowerPoint guys have decided that they will let you go ahead and edit slide number 8 from multiple devices or multiple people, because from their perspective, they can merge those changes or just show edits kind of like overlaid on each other, and the end users can go figure out, okay, you know what, Arnab added bullet point number 1, you added bullet point number 2, they're both fine, or maybe they actually conflict and you want to delete my bullet point. It's up to the user to decide, and that's okay. It doesn't actually mess up the flow of the presentation. The Word folks have decided that no, if you and I are editing the same paragraph, they'll actually end up with a completely incoherent document at the end. And so they end up using these paragraph level locks. The locks are not something that are required. The locks are not required for correctness. It's just an end user experience feature to ensure that people don't step on each other's toes. So that level of experience is something that is up to the implementer to decide how they want to, what kind of end user experience they want to enable in their unique client application. If you have a different kind of editor where your merge engine is smarter or it's okay to go ahead and overlay edits, you can definitely do that. Yep. So the next thing, I'm remoted into this machine, so I can't show offline. That's okay. That's all good. Okay, cool. So the one other thing I want to show is how this is actually connected up to SkyDrive Pro, right? So the document is on SkyDrive Pro. If I go to the SkyDrive Pro website, I can see the document. I can access it through the PowerPoint web app. This is my actual website, and it's showing up over here. That's the protocol Plugfest stuff. The thing that I've also done is I've synchronized that particular website. So I closed out of the PowerPoint web app, so it's telling me I'm no longer editing. That's another thing that's happening through the FSS HTTP protocol. Cool. So I've actually synced down that particular doc library to my local computer. And the way that it shows up in the user experience is it shows up at SkyDrive at Microsoft under Favorites in Windows. And this document, Office Client 2013 Overview, is showing up right over there. It's got a green check mark indicating it's in sync, all that cool stuff. So what we specifically mean by the integration we've done with the background sync engine is I'm going to actually go close this file. So I'm out of that document. If I reopen it from this local path, this is really a local path, right? Like this is an actual file on the Windows NTFS file system under C users, Arbos. It's just a folder. Nothing special about the file on the file system. The thing we've done is if you go ahead and open up this file from here in PowerPoint, this document A shows up as a server document, right? So there's some other things we've done in 2013 where we can roam where you left off. It's a feature we call resume reading. If I go to the backstage, it'll show up as a document that lives on my SkyDrive. If I go to the versions, it'll show you all the historical server versions that have already been created. So the cool thing we've done over here is even though this is a local file that is available offline to you, when you open up that file in the PowerPoint client application, it's actually able to figure out what the server URL of the document is, and then go ahead and connect to all the server-based features and web services that would have normally been available to you if you directly open the file from the web UI. I can't show you the offline edit stuff just as yet because I'm remoted in, but if you trust me, it's going to work. And the way it works is, again, even if you're offline, we can figure out this mapping. Obviously, we won't be able to query the server for the latest versions, but you'll still be able to make changes to the document. And once you make changes to it and you've reconnected back to the network, we will use the FSS HTTP protocol to re-upload the file back to the server. Again, incrementally, if there's a file level conflict, we'll use the merge engine to go ahead and merge in changes, just like you saw me merge changes while I was co-authoring, etc. So that's the thing we've done. We think it's a cool feature because it kind of gives you the offline access functionality that's provided by other competitors like Dropbox or Google Drive. But it also gives you the ability to ensure that the files you've opened from these offline file systems are cloud connected. They get the benefits of co-authoring. They get the benefits of resume reading. They get the benefits of being able to reconnect back to the server-side versions, history, and stuff like that. Okay. Cool. Is there a question? Got it. So the question is, does branch cache play any role in the sync between Office Line and SkyDrive? I actually have a couple of slides on branch cache, and I can come and talk about that at that point in time. The very quick answer I'll give you is it's not required at all. We do not use it between the Office 2013 clients and Office 365 or SkyDrive.com, or internet-facing services. But we did do a feature in Office 2013 that enables integration of the FSS HTTP protocol with some of the branch cache features for on-premises client deployments. And that's what I'll come back and talk about. So we talked about the SkyDrive demo. Just trying to do a quick time check and make sure that, actually that's good, great. Let's get straight to branch cache. I don't have a branch cache demo because it's kind of hard to give, right? It's basically supposed to go ahead and make your file open latencies a bit lower. I'll talk a little bit about the rationale for us integrating with branch cache and give you a quick high-level overview of what it means to the end user. So there might have been a branch cache talk separately earlier on this week. I think I saw it on the calendar. I don't know if folks here have gone to it. But the motivation for branch cache is you've got some data centers in your headquarters. That's where the actual file is located. You've got people in a branch office over a low bandwidth, high latency link. And you want to ensure that those guys get access to the data as fast as possible. With the FSS HTTP protocol and the Office document cache, synchronization of changes is fast and incremental. And it's going through our cache, so it's asynchronous for uploads. And reopens can happen straight from local disk with us checking for updates in the background. But the one scenario where this protocol lags behind in comparison to branch cache is the first time file open scenario. If the user has never opened the file before, or if the user has not synchronized their SkyDrive Pro down to the local machine like I have, it means that for the first time you're opening the file, you're downloading the whole file over this low bandwidth, high latency network. And so we work with the branch cache team to essentially integrate with some of the APIs they had to be able to still use the FSS HTTP protocol, but augment it in a way such that we could call the branch cache team's APIs and check the local area network for branch cache data, specifically focusing on these first-time file open scenarios. So that's the scenario we wanted to go address. And Simon's going to talk a little bit about aspects of the protocol that make it possible for us to go ahead and do this integration. But at a high level, it's still exactly FSS HTTP from a logical perspective. We are just optimizing it a little bit by saying, oh, the client doesn't have these bits, so can the server give us some hashes for them, which we can query on the local area network? It still looks like a FSS HTTP response, but there's some smarts on the client side to be able to use branch cache to go ahead and get the data locally instead of having to get it over the wire. So that's what it is. This is only available if you have SharePoint 2013 on the server side, branch cache enabled on the server, Office 2013 on the client, and branch cache enabled on the clients. And there are other branch cache things, like you could have a distributed cache versus a dedicated one, but I'm not an expert on that. It's basically if you follow the branch cache white paper and you have 2013 on both ends, you should be good to go. The final thing I'll end with is a feature that we enabled in 2013 on the server side that's called the shredded store. I believe there's going to be a white paper on this released publicly relatively soon. I know there's been a few talks about this in other SharePoint conferences in the past. I'll touch at a very high level on what the motivation for the shredded store is and what it kind of means. The motivation is we want to make sure that the amount of data we write into the SharePoint backend store is proportional to the change we're sending over the wire. In Office 2010, when we first implemented the FSS HTTP protocol, it made sure that the changes going over the wire between the client and the server were proportional to the edits made by the user. But on the server side, there was no direct integration with storage. So what it meant was I could send a couple of slides worth of data over the wire, but essentially the entire PowerPoint presentation was being rewritten for that update on the SharePoint side. It's bad from a scale perspective. It's bad from a COGS perspective if you're running your own server. So what we did in this 2013 release was we worked with our SharePoint counterparts, and we essentially have the benefits of the FSS HTTP protocol going not only over the wire, but also straight into SharePoint storage. So that's the first part about writes a row of change. The second kind of ancillary benefit that this gets us is if you have historical versioning enabled, like I have enabled on this particular presentation, it enables us to store historical versions as deltas of a base. And so it essentially helps us reduce the total amount of disk space taken up by historical versions stored on the server side. The way it's enabled in 2013 right now is this kind of deduplication or delta storage only works for historical versions of the same file. This is not a generic deduping solution like other people may have that spans multiple different files or looks at the entire database. It's just for that specific document and just historical versions for that document. And that's it, actually. That's what I wanted to sort of talk about. I kind of closed on sort of rehashing the diagram we went through, but I know I'm kind of over time, so I want to stop talking about slides, and I'll take more questions. There have been some minor updates to FSS HTTP 2013. Sorry, the question is, were there any changes to FSS HTTP 2013? Yes, there were some minor updates. They're all optional because our clients need to remain compatible with legacy servers and vice versa. So the changes are specific to some of the features I called out, like being able to go ahead and integrate with branch cache, or being able to reduce the total network latency required to open up a document, so on and so forth. So they're optional augmentations, and they should already be part of the protocol documentation that's available online. If folks have no more questions, I'm going to hand off to my peer Simon. Simon, as I said, is a developer on our team. He's the expert on the FSS HTTP protocol, and he's going to dive a bit deeper into that actual protocol itself.